Hi everyone and welcome to another live Q&A. My name is Cedric Marin and I'm an immigration lawyer, and today we have half an hour to speak about some important changes to the post-graduation work permit, and in addition to changes involving express entry. So the first part, we're going to dive deep into post-graduation changes and express entry, and in the second part, we're going to talk in specific about immigrating to Canada. So feel free to ask your questions live in the chat. And first and foremost, let's talk about the post-graduation work permit. So let me switch over here to the screen. Just one moment. Let me connect this, connect my browser here. And there we go. So these are brand new changes to the post-graduation work permit program that was announced on December 23rd. And it impacts individuals who studied during COVID, but also individuals going forward who are becoming eligible, who are doing a program that is eligible for a post-graduation work permit. So here are the things that it is going to cover. And it is super, super important that if you're going to be applying for the 18-month post-graduation extension that was announced in August of this year, you must do so by December 31st. So super, super important. This program, we'll get to it in a few moments, but this program is closing in literally 2 or 3 days. So make sure you get on this. As a brief recap, those of you who had a post-graduation work permit that expired between September 20th, 2021 and December 31st, 2022 are eligible for an 18-month extension to get your work experience and then get into your express entry Canadian work experience, get those CRS points. So we'll talk more about this, but just you must submit your post-graduation 18-month extension by December 31st, 2022. A lot of people have already received their work permits in the mail, right? So it was a program where some of them would receive the mail, but some people needed to apply. And if you haven't received it yet, I would encourage you that even if you think you're going to receive it, to maybe make an application, because they're going to be very, very strict with this timeline, and it's going to be super, super important to get it right. We'll take questions. Sorry, I was looking at the questions here. There we go. We'll take questions in a few moments. But yeah, please feel free to ask your questions. We'll get to them in a few months. Right now, we're just going to talk about some things that are hot off the press. All right, so post-graduation work permit, eligible international students. Let's take a look here. So it's going to do some changes with the application deadline. And the big change is to do with outside Canada. But you regardless, once you receive your final transcript, or you receive your diploma, or you receive a program completion letter from IRCC, you must stop working. And you must, well, I strongly recommend that if you can, apply for your post-graduation work permit. We'll talk more about this, but when you apply for your post-graduation work permit, you will most likely be eligible to work while they process your application. So this is another thing we'll talk about. There's so much to talk about, but let's just go step by step here. All right, so if you're outside Canada, good news now. You do not need to hold or have held a valid study permit within 180 days to apply for the post-graduation work permit. However, you still need to apply within 80 days of having received a written notification regarding the DLI. So I'm curious here to see this, because if you're inside Canada, you need to have a study permit. But if you're outside Canada, you don't need a study permit to attend school inside Canada. So I'm very curious to see how this change is going to play out. So for those of you who are outside Canada and applied for and were doing studies, but your study permit expired and you continued your studies inside Canada, well, you can now apply for post-graduation work permit under this policy. You still need to apply within 180 days having completed your program. So super, super important if you're outside Canada looking to apply to a post-graduation work permit. All right, distance learning, right? So this is going to be quite interesting. So for those of you who know, right, you can't have more than 50% of your courses. They have to be, so 50% of your courses or more have to be inside Canada in person. If it's more than 50%, right, it's not going to count for the length of a post-graduation work permit. Now, they've made some changes. So students who were enrolled in programs in March 2020 or who started a program between March 20th and August 31st, 2022 are not required to complete the program of study in Canada. 100% of the program can be completed online from outside Canada. This is huge, right? So those of you who return to your country but continue to study remotely, you can apply for a post-graduation work permit. If you started your study during this period here, it's super, super important. But keep in mind, it's only until August 31st, 2023 that time spent outside of Canada will be counted to the length of your overall post-graduation work permit. All right, there's another thing here called reduced facilitation measures. So again, this is going forward, right? So people who have started or are going to start a program of study in September 1st, 2022 or August 31st, 2023 are now required to complete at least 50% of their program in study in Canada, right? So you should come back to Canada. If you're outside, you should come back to Canada. For the above group, until August 31st, time spent studying outside of Canada will be counted towards the overall length. It only constitutes less than 50%. So we're talking about full facilitation measures, right? So people who can continue their whole program 100% online, you now are eligible for post-graduation work permit. Those of you who started one recently, keep in mind about these changes, that it's now putting it clearly in paper that only 50% is going to be allowed to be outside of Canada. The 50% needs to be inside Canada. They're talking more about here about about how they're going to assess your application. These are super, super, super important changes. Distance learning while inside Canada, right? So the time spent studying online in Canada until August 31st, 2023 still counts towards the length of the post-graduation work permit. However, students are highly recommended to attend class in-class options when offered. So if you're inside Canada, right, and you're attending online, right, whether you move to somewhere else, whether or not because of a medical issue you've been attending by distance learning, keep in mind that this is only going to take place until August 2023, but this change is great, right? If you're inside Canada, you can continue online distance learning, but really it's only going to take place until August 31st, 2023. Program stacking, we're not going to get too much into it. I think it's quite unique or uncommon that people do 2 eligible programs of study. But if you're curious, read this policy here. Super, super important. All right, part-time status. This is going to save a lot of people. So COVID was very difficult for a lot of people. And this part-time status is going to be great because previously, if you were part-time as a student, you may not be eligible for a post-graduation work permit. One of the requirements is that you were full-time study except your last semester, which is part-time. So now they specifically recognize that those of you who became part-time students due to course cancellation as a result of the public measures, right? So as a result of COVID-19, in these semesters only, right? Only in these small semesters will still qualify for the full-time for a post-graduation work permit. So it's very specific, but it does give us some hope that early in the pandemic, when you had to continue your studies or go to part-time studies because of COVID-19, you're still going to be eligible for post-graduation work permit. Here's the work authorization that is super, super important. So from the time you get your completion letter or you stop working for the post-graduation work permit, right, you're going to have to stop working right away. And then when you submit your post-graduation work permit, you should get a letter that confirms that you're allowed to continue working. So this is very interesting, right? Because you're only going to receive that letter if, right, you hold a valid study permit, you completed a post-graduation program, right, a program that's eligible for the post-graduation work permit, you met the requirements for working off campus, and you did not exceed the allowable hours of work. So if you worked more than 20 hours when you were not allowed to, this could be an issue that prevents you from getting this letter. And what we do know is that they're actually checking forms automatically to see whether or not people are answering yes to the question of unauthorized work. And it's super important to be honest in your application, give them all the details. Keep in mind that there were some policies in 2020 and 2021 regarding essential services that allowed you in some cases to actually work more than 20 hours a week, but definitely important to mention this inside of your application. All right, this is the policy, as I mentioned at the very beginning, that is expiring in like 3 days, 2-3 days. So it's very, very important that if you qualify for the 18-month, right? If you qualify for the temporary policy for the 18-month, to make sure that you follow these directions. This was announced in August, but it's the first time now that they talk in concrete details and they give instructions to officers as to how to assess the eligibility requirements. So make sure to take a look at this. If you've made a mistake, update your application, right? If you haven't received your work permit yet, you should consider maybe making an application for for the work permit. And worst comes to worst, you're going to receive it by the mail and you're going to cancel your work permit application. Best case scenario, right? For whatever reason, you were supposed to make the work permit application yourself and you didn't, and you've saved yourself by applying for the work permit. So super important to take a look at that. All right, so that's post-graduation work permit. And again, it's really, it's brand new stuff that is hot off the press that was announced December 23rd. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is express entry. So some of you may know that because of the new NOC changes, so they changed the way that they assess work experience slightly. They made some small changes, and this has caused some issues, and the draws actually had to stop. And they stopped back in December, or late November was the last draw, and they've stopped in December. Actually, sorry, I'm just getting confused here. I have a few clients that are waiting for the invitations to apply. Let's just go take a look here at the last draw. So the last draw took place in November. We're expecting draws in December, but they stopped, and we know that it was because of IT issues. What we also know is that sometime in the new year they're going to start. They're going to start with the occupation specific draws for express entry. So they're going to take people in the express entry based on their occupation, based on where they want to work, instead of based on the CRS score. So that's going to come out in spring. We know it's been confirmed for spring. We're waiting to hear back, but we do expect the draws to continue. And very recently, IRCC has shared that they're having technical problems with some NOCs. So previously, right, they confirmed it through various channels, but now here we have a concrete warning, concrete explanation of what's happening, and they're saying here that they continue to have issues with federal skilled trade. Some people using specific NOC codes, but here they're actually specifically acknowledging that if you continue to have issues, to go ahead and make a web form to contact IRCC. So this leads me to believe: are they going to stop the ITAs for another few draws until they fix all the IT issues? Are they going to proceed with program-specific draws like we saw during COVID, where they're only going to take Canadian experience class, or even maybe federal skilled workers as they figure out issues with the other programs? It's very interesting, but what we do know is that IRCC is working hard to fix these IT issues. And if you were eligible all of a sudden, in November and December, your profile became eligible, or even if you received an ITA, but you know that you really don't have Canadian work experience, that you should have never received this, decline the ITA. It doesn't make sense to apply and hope that it's going to go through the cracks. I really doubt that these applications are scrutinized by IRCC. If you don't have proof of the Canadian work experience, if you don't have proof of what you put into your profile, even if you receive the ITA, it doesn't mean that you're accepted as a permanent resident, right? I would really just decline the ITA if you know that you don't qualify and if you know that you received this in error. So just to recap, big changes to the post-graduation work permit, those for distance learning, part-time studies, those for you for the 18-month extension. Take a look at the policy instructions. Maybe there's something you missed in your application, right? Update your application or even reapply if you even haven't received your work permit. For express entry, we really hope that this means that they fixed some technical problems. They're going to resume some program draws, but they're still working hard to fix other programs. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what IRCC is going to do. Only time will tell about what's happening. But if you are having issues, technical issues, please make the web form. And I think these instructions are the same. Yes, these instructions are the same. So we're really waiting for IRCC to provide more clarity. But essentially, most of the challenges experienced by PNP clients were resolved. There's the majority of IT issues impacting express entry clients have been resolved as well. This is what we know. We know that there's ongoing issues with the federal skilled trade program. So we're really looking forward to see what's going to happen, right? If we go by the draw date, what could be the next draw date? Let's try to find it here. Had it up. So November 23rd. So we're supposed to have one on December 7th, December 21st. So the next one could be January 4th, assuming we're going with that Wednesday every 2 weeks. So maybe in the new year, it's going to be a January 4th draw. Keep in mind the score might increase slightly because more candidates will be inside the pool, right? But this is something that we're going to remain active to see. Oops, we're actively going to follow to see. Completely lost the draws here to see. Where's the date? There we go, to see what happens with the CRS score, but most likely still in the 490s by the end of the year, guys. So there we go. There we have it. I see lots of questions are pouring in. Thank you so much for the questions. We have about another 10 to 20 minutes to go through all these questions. And I really try to do like a, first come, first serve, but keep in mind that I want to make this also as helpful for as many people as possible, right? So if your question is very specific, or if it's really, really, if it needs legal advice, I might skip it. But listen, let's get right to it. All right, Pravvesh says, hi, Cedric. Well, hi to you. We have Fatima also says hi. And we have our first question. How can you file an official complaint against IRCC? In very, very interesting question. So are you looking to make a complaint against IRCC itself, or are you looking to make a complaint against somebody at IRCC? So both of these are going to be a little bit different. If you want to, I don't know how you can make a complaint against IRCC as a department, maybe to your member of parliament, right? But keep in mind that IRCC does have a code of conduct that officers need to follow. And some of them, right, are going to deal with IRCC's responsibilities as to what they do. Some of them are going to deal specifically with employees' responsibilities, right? But these are very, very serious. These are things that IRCC takes very seriously, right? I believe, and again, this is not a common question, but I believe here it's going to tell us about complaints. So there's here, I think we're talking about the internal complaints. Let's just see here if I can find how to make really a complaint against someone at IRCC. Again, I wouldn't make it. I would take this very seriously and only make it really if you believe there's been an issue with an immigration officer or someone who works at IRCC. Again, this is not a common issue that we face. So there is a line here to contact to report fraud or abuse. You can also make complaints against lawyers. Against lawyers, you would make it at the Law Society. Against consultants, you would make it at the with their consultant body, which is called the Regulated Council of Immigration Consultants. You can make a complaint there, but to make a complaint against an IRCC, listen, I think it's going to take more than a few minutes. I don't think there's a lot of people who are trying to make complaints. You could possibly make a web form to make a complaint. It could be an appropriate option. Hopefully it gets triaged properly. You could also try, if it's fraud or abuse, you could also try to report fraud or abuse. It tells us here how to report various issues to IRCC. You could try calling, but we all know that it doesn't always pick up. But you can definitely try making a web form. Again, we try to go through as many questions as possible. I don't know exactly who you're trying to make a complaint against, but listen, I hope this was helpful in the few moments we have to provide some general information. Right, we don't provide any legal advice, right? So if you like to speak with us, right, actually look at your immigration application, look at your forms. We are HOLF Immigration Law. Head over to our website holf.com, holflaw.com. So HOLTHE law.com. Also a link in the description. Go ahead here about us, our team. You can learn more about us. We are all immigration lawyers. So I'm an immigration lawyer. I'm not a consultant. I provide legal advice on applications to Canada. So federal court applications, refusals, express entry, post-graduation work permits. This is the stuff that I focus on, really to help individuals. I have a civil law Juris Doctorate, a Master's of Law, and I'm licensed to practice law in Ontario for all applications except in Canada, except Quebec, right? Go ahead here at the very top right, speak with a lawyer. You can head over to book a 25-minute consult. or a 50-minute consult. The goal of the consult is for us to talk about your situation, talk about how the best road for you to come to Canada, what documents you may need. And we do express entry, we do work permits, we do federal court applications of refusals. This is the stuff that you need a lawyer to. Well, I mean, you don't need a lawyer, but where we recommend to have a lawyer to properly prepare applications. All right, let's head back here to our questions. Fatima says, hi Fatima, nice to hear from you. Fatima says, for PR applications, do I need to translate all the Arabic passport stamps within my 10 years travel, or entry and exit stamps only? So excellent questions, Fatima. And we're going to go ahead and flip over to the completeness check. And the first question for you is going to be, do you need to provide all your passport stamps? So let's take a look here. This is really, really important. This is going to have all the information that IRCC wants. So the short answer to your question, Fatima, is you don't have to provide all the entry and exit stamps to support all your statements regarding the travel, right? You don't have to do that. In terms of your passport, when they talk about the mandatory documents for all applicants, so medical documents, right? You don't need your passport stamps or medical documents. Copy of your biographical data page of a passport. So here, they want a clear and legible copy of the biographical data page of a passport or a travel document, right? So here it's not talking about passport stamps, right? Proof of work experience again. And again, you could look at other mandatory documents like birth certificates for minor children, proof of studies, and so on. But you don't generally need to provide all your entry and exit stamps. Take a look at the completeness check. And again, this is just legal information. Maybe there's a situation that you want to explain and you want to provide proof of the entry and exit stamps, and you're allowed to provide more documents. In that case, yeah, all the documents not in French or English must be translated. But my first question is, do you even need to provide these stamps? If you do, absolutely get them translated. All right, Samuel says, Samuel, 2 questions here. Can I change from postgraduate work permit to spousal open work permit? Yeah, I mean, if you meet the eligibility requirements, you can submit an application to extend your stay inside Canada as a worker, and you can change from the postgrad to the spousal open work permit. And just want to, Samuel, you might want to take a look here at the LMIA exemption in terms of Canadian interests. So here, when we talk about Canadian interests, see here, I have all these links. I was reading about it earlier for another client. You can read here about the general eligibility for spouses or common law partner of skilled workers. So if your spousal open work permit is through a skilled worker, this is what you need to prove, right? If we're talking about spouse or common law partner of a study permit holder, this is what you need to demonstrate. Here are the documentary evidence that you're going to need, right? That they have a study permit and whatnot. So there's specific documents you have to provide, but I strongly encourage you to take a look at this link to see if you're eligible for the spousal open work permit. Can I have maintained status when transiting from a postgraduate work permit to spousal open work permit? It's possible, but you need to apply before your current post-graduation work permit expires to benefit from implied status, right? Now called implied status, to benefit from implied status between both your post-graduation work permit and your spousal open work permit. And if you're curious, we can actually go to the regulations. The regulations, this is the nitty-gritty, the laws and regulations of Canada. And what IRCC does is they make these nice websites to make it easy to understand. But don't forget that the regulations is the law of the land, and this is where we're going to find our authority to work without a work permit, right? So working without a work permit, you may work in Canada without a work permit if, right? And what interests us in your situation, all this legalese here, but let's go down to 186U here that talks about if you've remained in Canada after the expiry of your work permit and you continue to comply with the conditions set out on your expired work permit other than the date of expiry. So your post-graduation work permit is going to be an open work permit. You might have other conditions, you might not, but in your case, it's open work permits. You can change jobs as you wish, but make sure to continue to respect the same requirements, and you're allowed to work until a decision is made on an application. And again, I'm just providing general legal information as the regulations read it, right? I don't know if you're eligible for the spousal open work permit. This is not legal advice saying work for the next 6 months. This is not what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is, individuals who meet 186U this is the information I give you, and it's up to you to assess it. And Samuel, if you want to talk in detail about, are you allowed to work, the requirements for the spousal, can you work without a work permit? Obviously, reach out, book a consult, and we'll talk in detail about your situation. All right, Nisha, another question here, Nisha. Or sorry, not another question, but I see QQ, so you've definitely joined us a lot. I know Mark and Alicia want us to put the QQ to be able to identify these questions. So let's get right to it. Good morning, Cedric. Will there be an extension for post-graduation permits expiring in 2023? Nisha, it's a tough question. I mean, it's happened twice. And for years, since the post-graduation work permit was announced, for years, there was never extensions, right? There was no extensions ever for post-graduation work permits. Only if, it was going to expire before your passport, those types of situation. But that's not really an extension. Well, I guess it is, but it was very rare to have these extensions. But we saw it because of COVID. So for COVID, people with post-graduation work permits were not able to work, right? Stores were closed, businesses were closed. They could not work. They could not obtain their Canadian work experience. They could not apply to Express Entry. So what they did is they did provide 18-month extension, right? To finish, to allow people to get their experience and enough points to apply to come to Canada. So super important to work in a skilled position to qualify for Express Entry. And I know it's not the purpose of your question, but I just want to flip back here. Take a look here at the Canadian experience class, right? If you're in Canada, and take a look here at the minimum requirements for at least 1 year of full-time work, right? To be eligible for Express Entry. And then we can talk about the actual ministerial instructions, which allow individuals to get CRS points, right? All the nitty gritty again is going to be found in here that talks about, all these points here about how many points you get for spouses if they're studying, to how much points you're going to get for combination of your level of education and whatnot. So previously, because of COVID, people were not able to get this experience. So the question is, Nisha, are they going to do it again? Right? Or is IRCC going to think that people who got their post-graduation work permits now have had an opportunity to get that work experience? So I think it's going to be more likely that we're not going to see IRCC give another extension, but they could surprise us and we never know. But we're going to see right now, there's no extension for post-graduation work permits expiring in 2023. Anish says, hi, post-graduation expires in March, but can I apply for the closed work permit? I have my LMIA in process. So we're going to be under one of those. So Anish, you're going to be submitting a change of to extend your work permit, change of condition, right? So to apply, just trying to find you the. Trying to find you the actual link here, but I just found this, which was quite interesting. I was talking about how you'd be allowed to work with the same conditions as your current work permit. So in some cases, you're going to receive a letter that proves that you're allowed to continue working inside Canada. So this is going to be, you might have it in your case, Anish, as well, where you apply for an LMIA on your postgrad work permit. Since it's taking like 167 days right now for work permits, you might find yourself in a period of time where you can continue working under implied status because you already have an application. We just saw that earlier on the live Q&A, right? Section or regulation 186U talking about that. To answer your specific questions, you can do it. There's going to be an instruction guide that you need for applying, right? So here you're extending your work permit, and obviously you need to be named on the LMIA. Obviously the LMIA has to be approved. There's going to be other forms you have to submit, right? There's going to be supporting documents, but take a look here at the document checklist. It's going to have more information about what forms you need. And you're going to see here that if you are here they're talking about the spousal open work permit. So the checklist does have this. Obviously read the checklist, but don't be afraid to also read the actual policy changes, the policy rules that IRCC puts on their website, right? Here you're going to be working, here you're looking for an LMIA work permit. So if your employer has obtained an LMIA, right, provide a copy of the LMIA and a copy of your job offer from your prospective employer. That's going to be super, super important to do. So yeah, you can definitely do it, Anish. And again, I'm just giving general information. If you want legal advice, right, we can obviously do this for you. Work together and get your work permit application. All right, Priscilla has returned many times to our live Q&A. Nice to see you, Priscilla. Hi, Cedric. I received an offer from East Coast International College for continuing care assistant program am I eligible for post-graduation work permit after a 40-week program? So it's a little bit tricky. Well, not tricky, but there's more to your question when we're talking about post-graduation work permits. So let's flip over here. This is the operational instructions and guidelines and for temporary resident students. And let's take a look here for the validity, for the eligibility requirements. So first question, is East Coast International College a designated learning institute? Well, I don't know. You're gonna have to check that. Go here to take a look at the list and we can put that in there. So check that to see if they are a DLI, right? Now, you need to complete a program that's at least 8 months in duration. And as we're gonna see here at the very bottom, sorry, not this link, but as we're gonna see here, where's the table? There's a table that shows us, yeah, so is a program at least 8 months, but less than 2 years. So here they're going to be looking at, is your program of study at least 900 hours and less than 1800 hours? And if so, you may be eligible. Keep in mind, it's going to be a 1-year post-graduation work permit. So it's going to be pretty tough to get your Canadian work experience, to get that 1-year Canadian work experience and get more CRS points to apply for express entry. But listen, kind of a loaded question here. Check to see if it's DLI, check to see, you can ask your school, you can see whether or not you're going to be going over the 900 hours. There's only some programs as well that qualify for post-graduation work permit, right? So we can take a look here in more detail at the bottom, talking about distance learning we've talked about already. So here you make an application within Canada, and then who can apply. Then we can see here that inside Canada graduates. So right, we're not even talking about this, but right, so you completed a program of study that led to a degree, diploma, or certificate. So something else that we need to figure out is what are you going to obtain at the end of this study program? So is it a DLI? Right? How many hours for the DLI? Does it equal to that minimum 8 months? Does it lead to a degree, diploma, or certificate? And then, I mean, it seems like quite a, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't have enough information, and I just, do your own research, or obviously book a consult with us if you'd like to learn more about your specific situation and get legal advice. All right. What is the post-graduation length? For graduate diploma, 16 month in duration. So it's interesting. So are you talking about 16 months, like like 8 month, like 4-month term, like fall, winter, or are we talking about fall, winter, summer, fall, right? So we've seen here on this previous link, let me just share my screen again. So we've seen here on this previous link how they calculate the validity and application of work permits, right? So here the program is 2 years or longer. So here we're talking about the actual study. This is for Quebec. Sorry, this is for Quebec in terms of the number of hours for vocational schools. But here about how they calculate it. And what I'm curious to know, Unique, is what about accelerated studies? So if you do a 2-year program, but you finish it in 16 months, right? Is this usually counts for the full length of the program study? Authorized breaks, right? So if a summer break during the summer usually counts towards the length of a post-graduation work permit. But these are just some things that you would consider in making the post-graduation work permit application. You may want to actually reach out to your school. Your school most likely has experience. We know that some of our people who've applied, people that have applied for, they might have experience on people who've already applied for their post-graduation work permits. Hey, Axel, congrats. Hello, Cedric. Thank you very much for all your responses, my questions. I got my confirmation permanent residence in December. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Axel. I've seen you many times on here, and I'm very happy that we could help you. Very, very happy for this. Keep in mind, your confirmation of permanent residence is an expiry date. It's linked to your medicals. Definitely come to Canada before that because they don't extend it. So definitely important to know. When you're coming to Canada, you have to come before your confirmation of permanent residence expires. And Axel, congratulations. This is what we love to hear. Congratulations. Pavneet, new changes to post-graduation work permit? Absolutely. go take a look on our the beginning of the video. We talked in detail about that. Andy Rodriguez says, greetings from Ottawa. Greetings to you too, Andy Rodriguez. Nice to see you. We have here amongst us saying, hello, Cedric. Do you think they will increase the number of ITAs next few draws? Because they weren't able to issue any ITAs in the last few weeks. Just average things out. So we have the immigration level plans. So the immigration level plans is, as you may know, the government of Canada sets targets every year for how many immigrants they want to bring to Canada. And there's low ranges, there's high ranges, and this actually changes quite a bit. I'm not sure why it's not showing, but oh yeah, there we go. And then we have the other one. So what we're interested in is federal high skilled worker. We know that this here is, our express entry. So let's go take a look here. So I'm sure you could find the numbers for 2022. I can tell you that the numbers were definitely lower for 2022. And like the numbers are only going to increase, right? So regardless of not if they're trying to regardless of what's happened in the past, we know that ITAs are only going to increase. Now, interestingly, in a few days, it's going to be the start of a new year. So I don't know if they're necessarily going to be playing catch up, right? They might have already met their low range target. And that's great. Next year, new target. What we do know is that there's going to be more and more ITAs because they're taking more and more people through the express entry. So yeah, we're going to see there's much more ITAs are coming, and much more ITAs are coming. Sorry, I look at the questions and at the same time trying to find the next question, but I do get distracted sometimes. There we go. Unique says, program completion letter suffice for diploma or certificate in express entry application. Unique, unfortunately, no. I'm going to refer you. We're going to go back to the completeness check, guys. We love the completeness check here at Oath Immigration Law because it tells us exactly what we need to know. And the the education. Did I pass it already? Yeah, I think I passed it. Police certificates, medical, letter of offer of employer. Where's education? All right, proof of studies, guys, not education. But yeah, so what they want is proof of having completed your Canadian or post-secondary education program. And to prove this, you have to have the actual degree itself. So the certificate, diploma, degree, and the transcripts for successfully completed the secondary and post-secondary studies, if applicable. And you're going to see in your express entry application, you can only put the degree has been awarded, or you're going to say in good standing but not awarded, and it's not going to give you the points unless you put awarded. So Unique, you're going to have to wait to get these documents, the actual degree itself, the certificate, degree, diploma, whatever, before you can actually proceed and submit your application. So no, the completion program, the program completion letter is not sufficient for express entry, but as we saw for the post-graduation work permit, it is. Pravneet, can you change from a study permit to a spousal open work permit? You can. Again, we've talked about the requirements, the LMI exemptions, right? You're not going to have implied status because you're not going from work permit to work permit, but here you're going from a study permit to a work permit. Or sorry, you will have implied status as a student, but you're not going to be allowed to work really until they give you that open spousal work permit. Again, we talked about implied status earlier, and I think for now that's going to suffice. But yeah, it's possible if you meet program requirements, right? You can't just apply for a spousal. You really have to prepare a good application. All right, Joseph says, hi, Senator, question. If you apply for a visitor visa and you have a passport that will expire soon, is it possible to get a new one? Why the old passport is in the while the old passport is in the IRCC system? Yeah, I mean you definitely should. If your passport has expired within the last 6 months, you definitely get a new passport. The visas in your passport are most likely going to be only valid until the old passport. So yeah, definitely get on it, get a new passport, update IRCC web form, update your application, right? If you have any old visas in your passports that have a longer date than the expiry of your passports, unlikely, but those would be valid with a new passport. So new passport, old visas, but only if the date prolongs, which I really doubt it does. Anyways, I'm confusing you, but what I'm trying to say here is that get a new passport, update IRCC by web form. It's super, super important to do that. All right, let's try to find our next question here. Some very specific questions, guys. I'm trying to find questions that. This is an interesting one. Talafal says 3 months since I got acknowledgement of receipt saying that it was reopened following my reconsideration request over my refused study permit. So interesting. As you guys may know, I have a whole blog. It's quite popular, getting lots of hits here on our website. Go to the very top here, go on legal help, and go submit a reconsideration. This is really for people to make their own reconsideration requests. I had quite a bit of success myself doing them for clients, but it's very detailed. Like, we're not beating around the bush here. This is how you make your own reconsideration requests. So take a look at that. Essentially, when you have a refusal, you can make a reconsideration request to the office, asking them to reopen the application. Right? They might have made an error, right, going through the application too quickly. Interesting question here. Maybe make a new web form and ask them saying, hey, look, I got this acknowledgement of receipt saying it's going to be reopened. It's still pending. It's also possible that they've reopened the application and put it back into processing. And since they're doing a first in, first out, right, they're looking at the applications that were submitted before you. But typically the reconsideration requests, in my experience, are being, either it's going to be, when it's reopened, it usually gets decided quite quickly. But again, as I talk about in the blog, reconsideration requests, offer quite a bit of leniency to visa officers. There's no hard rules about what they must do, in terms of reopening and whatnot and sending letters. So I would make a new web form, and that'd be a great way to go from there. Now, I do apologize, guys. I do have a meeting coming up, so I have 3 meetings coming up, but I do really need to leave you guys. I'm going to go through here the questions. I see our last question here. Gunnar Boy, nice to see you. I know you booked a consult earlier and we talked in detail about your situation. Says, hi Cedric, I hope you're enjoying the holidays and keeping warm. Thank you so much. IRCC asked for additional family documents and it shows I passed medicals. Is this normal? And how long does it take usually to get PPR once I submit that? So why are they asking for additional family documents? Is it because you claimed a spouse inside Canada? Didn't mean to spam. I appreciate it. No problem. How do I submit? So so it's again, the completeness check is going to tell you about family documents that you need to submit. So if you claim points for siblings inside Canada, right, it's going to be very specific at the very bottom in terms of what they want as terms of siblings inside Canada. So usually includes their Canadian citizenship certificate or PR card or proof that they are a PR citizen inside Canada. I'm just trying to find here the type sibling. Maybe it's under family member. Yeah, family member. Let's see here at the very bottom. So these are the documents of proof of relative. Is this what they're asking you, Gunabur? No, you did not. So interesting. So I wonder why they're asking for additional family documents. By family documents, do you mean like a spouse? Yeah, for your CC application. Yeah, right. But I don't know specifically why they're asking you for why they're specifically asking you for family documents. Listen, I'm pretty sure you have my email. If not, just reach out to info. Well, I've already booked a consult, and I want to get to the bottom of how we can help you. It's my pleasure to chat briefly about how about what's going on and how we can help. So feel free to send me an email with the actual additional document requests, and we can briefly just go over it. But yeah, it might be easier just to clear up in a few minutes in a quick call to go over this. And thank you so much, guys. I see some. I'm so sorry I didn't get to all the questions. Keep in mind, Alicia and Mark do a live Q&A in about a few hours. So I'm pretty sure it's scheduled. If not, it's going to be at their usual time on Thursdays. But I see so many great comments. And Simon says, thanks for these helpful videos. Much love appreciated. Thanks, guys. And listen, I really wish you guys well. I'm going to be back. I think I'll do live Q&A Tuesday. If not, definitely next Thursday, live Q&A. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful New Year's and happy New Year's. Thank you.